All right. Thank you for that, Storm, and good afternoon, everyone. We might get started because I'm conscious of how busy everyone's schedules are. My name is Kouparitsas. I'm the Chief Customer Officer here at With You With Me, and I'm joined by Storm Vance, who you heard from earlier, who's the Chief Client Experience Officer from the Art of Mentoring. We are both very happy to have you here today as we explore a topic that is front of mind for many leaders, which is how we can build data-driven succession pathways for diverse talent. In terms of what you can expect today, we have you for around 45 minutes, and we're going to make sure it's very full and productive. I'll kick things off with a bit of an introduction into the topic and explore how data-driven leadership development is assisting organisations to break down some of the barriers that have traditionally showed themselves around diversity and leadership. And then Storm is going to take a closer look at the role of mentoring in those strategies before we have a truly extraordinary special guest who you see on the screen, Tara from Pearson, who is going to take us through some of her experiences in this space over her wonderful career. If you do have a question throughout this session, please feel free to drop it in the chat and we can answer those as we go or at the end. And if we do run out of time, we'll follow up with you directly as well. So we will kick into it. And I do see a lot of familiar names on here who attended our last session. So thank you for coming back. But for those newcomers, we might just give a quick background as to who Storm and I are before we get started. So Storm, I'll just get you to get started.
For sure. So I am Storm Vance. I'm with Art of Mentoring. And to tell you a little bit about who Art of Mentoring is and what we do, we help organizations create impactful mentoring programs that drive development, growth, and leadership. We start by designing tailored programs that are fully aligned with team-specific goals, ensuring they meet the unique needs of the people you're serving. Our platform makes implementing and managing easy. We match mentors and mentees, tracking their progress, and we also provide expert training and ongoing support to ensure all involved are equipped for success, really focusing on measurable outcomes to help organizations build and sustain programs that reliably achieve their goals.
Beautiful. Thank you, Storm. And just a bit on With You With Me, like Storm, we are a global HR tech company that works with organizations to solve their workforce skills challenges end to end. So that's everything from building skills frameworks to skills mapping employee current skills and potential to learn new skills, and then using those workforce insights to develop highly targeted professional development or hiring plans that make sure that an organization's capabilities align with what their objectives are. So that's the context of how we're going to be informing the discussion today. And of course, we have Tara, who's an HR leader from Pearson Workforce Skills, and we will go into her illustrious background with that Q&A. So just to lay some of the context for why we're here, I think as HR leaders, we all understand that leadership is the engine of any organisation. But what happens when that engine lacks diversity? The issue of inequality in leadership is not just a numbers game or a checkbox exercise. It's a systemic challenge with profound implications for everything from organisational performance to employee engagement and financial outcomes. I know we've all heard it many times before. Research consistently shows that diverse leadership teams drive better decision-making, more innovation, and ultimately profitability. But the reality tells a very different story. In the States, we currently have women making up just 10.4% of CEOs in Fortune 500 companies. And for racially and ethnically diverse individuals, the numbers are even more sobering. For example, only 4% of senior executives are Black. Obviously, these numbers will vary wildly from company to company, but it gives you a sense of just how far we still are as a society from achieving gender equality and true inclusivity in leadership. And it's a problem that really needs to be tackled, I think, across three levels. Society itself, us as employers, but also at the individual level. How do we empower individuals to see themselves as leaders and set off on that path? And there's a lot of work underway to address this from a societal perspective. I know many of you are familiar with the 30% Club, which advocates for at least 30% of female representation on corporate boards and in C-suite positions. And of course, there's initiatives like Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In org. But what I'm really curious about is why this gap persists. And a major reason I have seen for this happening in many of the customers we work with is a lack of structured data-driven pathways for non-traditional talent to ascend into leadership. And without clear advancement opportunities, women and other underrepresented groups are often left behind, not just due to lack of capability, and certainly no lack of capability at all, but because the system isn't designed to support their growth. And that's why this conversation is so critical. I think as HR leaders, we are the architects of our organization's cultures and structures. So it's really important to come together to share some actionable steps that facilitate our organizations to collectively do better in this space. And the question isn't just how to identify people with leadership potential, but how to support them in successfully achieving these roles. And as I mentioned, it starts with data. It requires a structured approach that I think covers identifying that potential initially, understanding where the current and future skill capability is, and closing skills gaps through a tailored development plan. So the first step I would typically recommend in starting off down this path is understanding the individual. You know, we've heard this all before. Who are your people? What drives them? And how can they best succeed? Traditionally, much of this has come down to relying on the direct line manager, which can be how many people slip through the cracks. And it's no disrespect to the manager themselves. They may just have too many staff or not the time to really be considering their people for long-term organizational success, or even conscious or unconscious bias. And that's why taking a data-driven approach to identifying leaders at the organizational level is really critical. It's the only way that you can uncover at scale where the potential leaders may be hidden across your business. And for a holistic and objective view of an individual, assessments are a great starting point, and that can involve a lot of different kinds of assessments, everything from psychometric and cognitive and aptitude and learning preference assessments, as well as skills mapping current capability, which I'll come back to shortly. If you take someone's skills profile and enrich it with psychometric and cognitive insights, you can create a really holistic view of who they are and where they are now, as well as that potential to grow. And that allows you to start accurately matching people to potential career pathways, projects or roles, and also start to inform really targeted training and development plans. And I've just popped a very simple example of how that works in practice up on the screen, and that's using the Big Five assessment, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. But where it gets really interesting is when you analyze these kinds of Big Five insights against aptitude and cognitive insights to understand not only the skills that someone may naturally be geared towards, or behaviors they might typically show, but also those skills that they'll likely excel at and enjoy doing in the workplace. I always like to start with this view of an individual, as it's the only way to be truly objective for your people and to break down some of those barriers to someone being identified for leadership in the first place. And by implementing and sharing these kinds of data insights at that organizational level, your division heads, your HR team can start to identify individuals or pockets of individuals across the business who possess these high quality leadership traits that you want to invest in. And it also does wonders for the individual themselves to have that self-awareness and that insight into what they may be capable of. The other data set that is critically important is benchmarking the current capability of an individual and where that sits against their future career path. So basically mapping an individual's current skills to those future leadership opportunities. And you can do this with a custom skill or competency framework if your organization has one. But I'd also recommend using a more universal skills framework like SOPHIA, which is Skills Framework for the Information Age. SOPHIA is great. It's a global best practice. It's a not-for-profit, and it captures skills for roles across an entire corporate organization. And it not only has those technical skills that you might need for specific roles, but it also has what's called generic levels of responsibility. And those are the things that outline those key attributes for leadership, which I've got on the screen. Things like autonomy, responsibility, complexity, and business skills. So helping your potential leaders understand where they sit on across those areas, but also on a multi-level scale against each of those leadership traits, is great for that self-awareness that I mentioned, but it also is really important in setting clarity and alignment around what an organization may expect from its leaders. Because once you have that clarity, that sets the scene for someone to take meaningful action to start moving towards those goals. And that brings me to the closing of the gap. I think once you've got that view of leadership potential and a person's current capability, and you marry it against the leadership role requirements, you can start to more effectively close skill gaps. And here I think it's really important to look at the 70-20-10 model when building out professional development plans. And that is, 70% being experiential learning, giving someone real world opportunities like cross-functional projects or job rotations to help leaders develop autonomy and handle complexity. 20% of the social learning. So this is the importance of things like mentoring, coaching, having someone connected with experienced leaders to foster influence and business acumen. And then the 10% of formal learning. And this is all of your, online training, your workshops, your courses, precision upskilling that is going to help someone build technical competencies over time. So that's just a really quick walkthrough of a foundational process that puts you in a really strong data-driven position to start making real change and to entrench the process within your business, to remove barriers from non-traditional talent to ascend into leadership. And it's really important just to reiterate that data-driven approach, because many of the barriers people experience do organically get removed when you start to look at the data and you put everyone on an equal playing field based off their unique personal capability. And as you can see there, I hope I got the numbers right, but it's a pretty much a 5-step process. One I covered off on the first 4 steps earlier. And the last one you see there is mentoring, which I know holds a critical role in professional development, but especially when it comes to fostering growth from future leaders. So I'm going to pass that one over to Storm, just to share a little more on mentoring for leadership, and then to get stuck into the Q&A with our special guest, Tara, who's going to share some of her experiences delivering these kinds of strategies to support leadership growth throughout her career. Storm.
Yes. All right. So again, we're going to talk about all of those things and how they align with mentorship as such an important piece here. I think it's the next slide. Okay, so yeah, I just want to make sure everyone can see these key points, as I go through these, and really just the importance of implementing these types of strategies to build your leadership pipeline. The assessment of leadership potential is, obviously about recognizing the unique strengths of individuals, bolstering their confidence, and addressing challenges they may be facing, while also identifying any gaps in their skills or mindset that needs attention or support. In terms of ensuring organizational alignment, mentees often they routinely benefit from perspectives they may not have yet been exposed to. Mentors bring a range of their experiences to the table, challenging mentees' assumptions and helping them see beyond their current plans, their current state. And another key element is certainly designing personalized development plans. It's essential to focus on individuals' unique strengths, how they learn best, and the areas where they need to grow. Plans should be tailored to their personal journey, considering their values, circumstances, and aspirations, and providing a clear direction for them to work toward their specific goals. We also certainly emphasize precision upskilling within the world of mentoring, because using that action learning approach, mentors can guide mentees through real-time challenges, encouraging them to act, reflect, and learn in the process. And finally, crucially, creating those mentoring networks, connecting mentees with a broader network of mentors, peers, and contacts not only helps them expand their perspective, but also creates ongoing support and growth opportunities throughout their leadership journey. And we certainly believe in just all day, every day, implement these elements. We know that mentoring is a powerful tool for building leadership pipelines that are aligned with both individuals' development as well as organizational goals. All right, now I'm super excited to introduce our very, very special guest star here. We are so, so pleased to have Tara Karver, who's based in New Jersey and is the HR lead at Pearson Workforce Skills with us today to share her insights on the topic of building inclusive leadership pipelines. For background, Pearson is the world's largest education company, so Tara is clearly well positioned to speak on the topic of leadership, learning, and growth. She has also held HR roles with groups like Comcast, Procter & Gamble, the Hershey Company, so we're very much looking forward to hearing about these experiences today, Tara. And please, if you have any questions as we get this Q&A underway, please pop them in the chat box, and I believe we'll be monitoring those, and we'll certainly relay those questions, as they come up, throughout the conversation. So, Tara, you ready?
Ready. Thank you so much for that intro. I'm so humbled.
You're very welcome. We're super excited. We'll dive right in.
Yeah.
What all do you see as the biggest barriers for women advancing into leadership positions, and how can organizations address these challenges effectively?
Yeah, it's a good one, and I'll answer it almost a little bit from a personal, just my experience. I think one of the biggest barriers for women and advancing into leadership positions is really that thing called the imposter syndrome. And I think, one thing that, I realized over time is that we all have imposter syndrome. I remember my husband, who's pretty successful, has been in his career for a long time, came to me one day and he was like, that thing that you were talking about on the call, that imposter syndrome, I think I have that. And I was floored, because first of all, I would have never known, because it doesn't seem that way. So I think, to me, the aha was, okay, men have imposter syndrome just as much as women do, but I think, in my experience, women let it hold us back more than men do. So he said, I have that feeling, I'm going to let that feeling pass, and I'm going to move on, whereas I may go in a bit of a spiral around that feeling. So I think, continuing to help women build confidence, to get them the experiences they need to grow, to really prove to themselves that they can continue to grow and do it, or to just go do it, even if you don't have the experience. I think that is a barrier that we all need to come together to help everyone overcome. And I think there's things like, just the history of women. In my experience, I have 3 kids. I took off for each child, 3 months at least, 6 months, and some companies. My husband didn't. So there's just always going to be this inequity of, he didn't have that time off that I did, which I am so grateful for, and wouldn't want it any other way. But we need to start to normalize that men take time off as well. Otherwise, we'll never even the playing field when people are having children. So I think that's another thing that organizations just continue to do to support men and that responsibility, but also to support women and being on an equal playing field.
Definitely. That very insightful, very, very relevant. I think many of us can relate to that for sure. Can you share specific strategies or programs you've implemented throughout your career to support women in building leadership skills and confidence?
Yeah. So I don't know that it's necessarily just for women, but I think it definitely would help women. But I'm thinking about, there's mentorship, and then there's sponsorship. And the programs that I've worked on that I thought made the most impact are when you bring both of those together. So a sponsor, just in case you're not clear, a sponsor is somebody that helps they have the power in the organization to help you manage your career. A mentor is somebody you can just chat with. They can give you ideas. They've had experiences that are interesting to you that you can bounce things off of. They may or may not manage your career. And I think the programs that I have found to be the most helpful in growing women, men, people of color are the ones where we bring that together. So what we do is we identify who are some of our top leaders in the organization. Who are the people that, really are, they're either at the top of the house or they're heading to the top of the house. They not only are wonderful at the business side of things, but they also understand the importance of talent and the importance of building succession plans, the importance of bringing people along with them. So we find those people and they become almost like our board or our talent council or our sponsors. And then we get that next layer. And Sia talked about this, like that hidden talent. So who are the people that we know are really good, but they're not getting the exposure they need? They're not getting the projects that are gonna put the points on the board that they're gonna get the next big job. And we pull those people together and then we match them. Or maybe there's just some organic reason why they would come together as that mentor relationship. So they can have that mentor relationship with some of these seasoned leaders within the organization. So they get that exposure. And then we have conversations without the mentees with just those sponsors. And we talk about, okay, so this is a project we need to fill. Who on the team do you think could fill this project? This is a role we need to fill. Who on the team could fill that role? And what you get is not only the manager vouching for those individuals, but now they've got these strong sponsors that they've been mentoring that can also vouch for their career experience. So I think that's where we found the most movement, the most growth for our leaders at that next level, because we kind of married the importance of a sponsor and the importance of a mentor in one experience.
Tara, I love that. Just to jump in for a second, Storm, I love the idea of having the dual mentor and sponsor approach. So are an organization that has no formal structure in place for how you do this kind of exercise. How do you recommend getting something like that off the ground? Because obviously it's an HR-led initiative, but you're going to be having stakeholders across an entire organization who you need to lean into this process as well. How do you tackle that?
Well, it's so funny because when we did it, it was like going line by line of like, we just really knew, like just getting to know the talent and you kind of knew who your top leaders were, so that getting the sponsors was maybe a bit easier than finding that hidden talent. But as you were talking, I was like, oh, I wish I had this data, because I think, taking a data approach to getting these people, which we did try to do as much as possible, but that would be an incredible way to cut through the noise. And we didn't want the people that like everyone knows about. We wanted, again, that hidden talent that we know they're doing a great job, but they just don't, like, the noise isn't around them. And can we help to drive more noise so they can get those bigger opportunities? And to your point, it's a balance of what are they interested in? What does the company need? And making sure that is a good fit. But I think assessments would be a brilliant way to really get to that talent that you want to focus on and partner with the sponsors.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Definitely. Yeah, you're creating a network of advocates, really, for people. And in terms of, once you've identified folks, what are ways that you've typically, or in the teams that you've been on, help those leaders or those upcoming leaders identify skills they need to develop and how to grow those skills?
Yeah. So I think there's a number there's a number of things you can do here. And, I think historically a lot of people will say, well, let's send them to a leadership program. But what we did in this situation was we acknowledged that all of these different leaders need different things. So somebody might need help with presenting or telling a story with data. Somebody else might, need to build their EQ and kind of how they work with others. So what we did is really understand, what does this individual need? So using tools like 360s, understanding what's interesting to them, what they want to go develop, because no one likes to be told what to do. So when I come to you saying, this is what I need to work on, this is what's important to me, this is the job I want to have next, then we can really talk through, okay, what are the skills, or where are my gaps in order to get there? So I think you have to do a bit of an individual gap analysis. You leverage 360s, leverage different assessments to help you get there. But at the end of the day, I think it's a conversation between the sponsor, the manager, or whoever is putting the investment into that individual.
Got it, for sure. And what, based on the sponsorship development, mentorship programs that you've been a part of, advocated for, what role have you seen either of those elements, those efforts play in developing leadership potential among people you've identified to ascend in that direction?
Yeah. So again, it's very individual. But I would say that what we were able to do was look at a few different data points. We were working in an organization that was pretty siloed. So there wasn't really, people just kind of, the organization was big enough that you could grow from within. You didn't have to necessarily move around to different parts of the organization. But what we found with this group that we were working with is that they did do more cross-functional moves. They did move more. So a lot of times people were just kind of getting promoted in role, but we know that the best leaders take on lateral moves as well to grow really that breadth and depth of experience. So they were taking more lateral moves. So there was more internal movement, both lateral and promotion. They were crossing functions, crossing business units. So, we got that. And then just their experience of it. Their experience was they felt they were building the confidence. They had more exposure. And we even were able to look at how they had connections across the organization. So people who weren't in this experience didn't have as much of a broad network across the organization as the people that were in it. Because again, we were partnering them with people and leaders that were outside of their business unit. So they were able to really grow their network within the organization, which also opens up more opportunities for projects and just great conversation and insight with people you don't necessarily run into on your day-to-day. So we really expanded the network reach of the organization.
That's wonderful. And you certainly mentioned metrics and data points, and that's how I'm going to begin this next question for you. You talk about 360s and those tools that you've referred to identify your people and track them along the way. What would you describe as the scope of those metrics or data points in terms of tracking the success of succession planning, mentorship, and leadership development? Maybe in addition to those 360s to initially identify them, but along the way, what are ways that you've sort of gauged their progress or measured it over time?
Yeah. It's a great question. I think we're continuing to look at more ways to measure this, but some of the ones we were looking at is attrition. So were we able to retain these people that are top talent? Engagement. So we were big on making sure that our company has high engagement. So their team engagement scores, their engagement scores. So engagement is a big piece of it. Movement again. So that internal movement, I can't, if we have people growing their career within the organization, like that to me I'm most proud of that always. And I love lateral moves. I love promotional moves, but just getting people different experiences where they can stay in the company that they know and the culture that they know, but they can try something new and different. So that internal movement is always going to be important to me to track as well. And I'm trying to think if, so from a succession plan perspective, I think a lot of companies haven't been great at this. So, a lot of companies do go through and do succession plans, but when the role comes open, a lot of times you're rethinking the role and then you don't go with the identified successor, or some leaders will just put a successor in there to show that they've covered their butt if somebody does leave, but they would never actually put that person in the role. So we constantly battling to fight through that. Like, let's get real successors. And if you don't have a successor, let's call that out. The other thing, for certain roles, really just building talent pools. So maybe it's not I'm going to backfill this role, but I'm going to backfill any product management role that comes up in the organization. This is the pool of talent we have that could fill that role. And we should go there first before we look external, because they're going to get onboarded more quickly. And we really want to grow our talent from within. So I think moving from one-to-one succession plans, I think those are really important at the most senior levels. But then you can start to move to this idea of talent pools, and really building like groups of people that, it's almost just an interview slate when a role does come open, and using that to measure success. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up succession plans, because I think you hit the nail on the head with the challenge many organizations face, which is this idea that you're taking care of it in practice, but the data shows that it's not often that succession plan does come into action. Why do you think that is? Like, is the challenge that the manager whose role is the challenge at the manager whose role is being replaced level? Is it at the organizational level? Is it that we don't have systems or data in place? What do you think is the actual problem there? Or what have you seen, I should probably say, because I'm sure it's very different in many organizations. But how do we fix succession planning?
I know. And that's like the $1 million question. So I think it could be a number of things. I think it could be, especially as you get to more senior roles, sometimes that role only works because of that individual, because of the experience they have. So when that person leaves, it's, well, we should rethink this, or maybe we're splitting things apart. So the role just doesn't stay intact. The other thing is, sometimes you just want to open up and like understand what talent is out there, and that kind of changes your thinking on the role. So I think it's a matter of, and then the third thing I would say is that you put somebody in that box to show that you have a plan, but you never really intended to execute on that plan because you'd restructure things or want to go a different way. But you don't want your succession plan to look like you don't have a plan. So I think we just need to get people away from that feeling of, I need to show that I have a plan. I would rather you say, I have no one identified and we should be looking external to keep people warm. So we can move quickly, because a lot of times when you're doing succession planning, it's for roles that you need, like they can't be vacant long. So you want to be really quick. And I think it's just helping people think through that. It's keeping them top of mind. The other thing that I've seen organizations fall into is you're only looking at this once a year, and it gets stale really quick. I mean, the business is just moving so quickly. So if you're not continuing to look at it, it just gets old quick. And the other one is like, you put somebody in a succession plan, and then that role comes open, you're like, awesome, you interested? And they're like, no way, I would never want that job. Why do you talk to me first? So I think it's also that communication of, hey, and it's always a delicate balance, because you can't promise them the role, obviously. But if you were a successor for this role, is it something you'd be interested in? And I don't know that we're having that conversation enough either, because again, it's just the speed of the business, and sometimes these proactive conversations get pushed to the side to manage everything else going on.
It's really interesting. The other thing that I've seen is this shift to skills-based workforces that organizations are taking, I think has real benefit for things like succession planning, particularly in terms of building diversity, because I think a trap many often fall into is looking at a role through the lens of the person who's been in that position previously, which starts to breed the continuity of the same kind of person entering a role. Do they have a college degree, et cetera, et cetera? Right. And if you deconstruct roles down to the skills, what are the skills the individual needs? It opens up the workforce to, we're not trying to person, we're trying to replace this skill set, and we might have that skill set across many different pockets of an organization. And I think by looking at that, again, taking it back to that data, that objective view of the role that we need, it'd shift the way you're thinking about succession planning.
You're spot on. I think that is a huge barrier for us to overcome. I think that's a great call out. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's food for thought. The last question, and Storm, if you don't have any other questions, I just love one last one, and I am conscious of time. But Tara, I'm really eager. Like, you have done extraordinary things in your career. You've worked for a blue chip list of organizations. You're in a senior leadership role now, and I'm just curious for your own personal journey. What has been most valuable to you in terms of things that have happened, support that you received, training that you did, that took you on that pathway to senior leadership?
I would say there's a couple things. Well, maybe three things. One is, I think if sometimes it's really hard to be selfish with our own time. And I think one of the things that as I've continued to grow in my career, I've been really selfish with my mornings. So I, wake up super early. I do a really hard workout, just because that's what works for me. And it's almost like if I start my day in this much pain, then it can only get better from here. So I always, I'm really just, I have some mindfulness time. I try and do just a little bit of reading, get my workout in. So that morning time, I think, really has helped set the day and the tone, and has helped me manage all of the stressors of a family and a full-time job and everything that comes my way. I think that discipline has been super helpful for me personally. I know not everyone is a morning person. But that has been key for me. The second is I ask for a lot of help. So to manage everything, I'm just making sure that I my parents are 3 miles away. They're actually here now. So I just have I ask for a lot of help, and I think that has been hard for me to learn how to do, but definitely needed. And then the third is just back to this mentorship idea. I would not be where I am without the relationships, the mentor relationships. Like a lot, even most of my internal moves within organizations is because of a mentor that I had that put in a good word for me or had the job come open on their team. So I just think that importance of obviously showing your performance and getting the right experiences is most of it, like your 70-20-10 model. But keeping those relationships and making sure people know what you're interested in has been a game changer for me in growing my career. And even, this experience, see, I like meeting you and connecting with you, and we have similar interests in helping organizations and workforces grow and drive diversity and really make it a level playing field for people. And then we get to have this great conversation together with all of these wonderful people. So I just, continue to stress and make sure I prioritize these relationships, because you never know the different connections that you could make.
That's great. Beautiful words to finish on, Tara. Thank you so much. And if anyone has any other questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. Oh, we do have one. So the question, and thank you, Ron, for sharing, for a graduating female engineer who has narrowed her prospective organisations to join down to 2 or 3, what questions may she ask to know how she would fit into the company? Tara, do you have any suggestions there? It's a great question.
First of all, congratulations. That's not an easy degree to get. I think it depends on what you want to get out of it. So what's important to you? Is it the company culture that's important to you? Is it the purpose that's important to you? Is it the actual work? Is it the culture and how work gets done? So I think that is there are many. That's a tough one to answer, not knowing you and what's most important to you. But I think for me, I'd be asking about growth. So engineering is a function that there is just a ton of opportunity to grow in. So understanding, if I'm joining this organization, how can I expect to grow my career, both lateral moves and just upward mobility, whatever is important. But understanding like how people grow their career within the organization. And then also culture, will I feel supported to be able to grow my career here? I think those are two important ones. But Sia and Storm, what comes to mind for you both?
I would reiterate that, Tara. I think if it's all about fitting into a company, understanding what that culture is like, and also looking at it through the lens of you're joining a company to do a job, but you're also joining a company as part of your life and as part of your career. So understanding those career pathways, how they support people to grow, where you could go next, I think is really important to get from day one. And it shows great initiative as well. It shows that you're there not just to do the 9 to 5, you're there to move up and to excel. So yeah.
I would agree with that completely. And again, what might my growth look like over time? And yeah, just digging into just all of the nuance that's associated with an organization. But it's a great question, and congratulations.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So just to quickly wrap up, we've obviously covered a lot today. Thank you so much, Tara. I found that conversation really, really interesting, and it's always good to uncover different people's experiences for how they've tackled it. I think these similar sort of themes occurred throughout all of the points made today. So obviously, I started off by talking about this importance of assessing leadership potential. So you can use tools like the Big Five or Sophia to do the skills mapping and to evaluate aptitude, autonomy, potential to grow, potential to learn. The all-important organizational alignment. I think it is critically important that we ensure individuals are growing in the direction that a company needs, not only so the organization can achieve its objectives, but so that individual feels like they have clarity, meaning, and reward in their own journey. So when we are crafting those leadership development pathways, making sure that there is that real alignment and clarity of expectation as to where someone is today and where they could go in future. Having that really personalized growth plan. So obviously organizations have many different roles and leadership pathways, but how are we going to drill down based off the data to make sure that that one individual is successful? How can they best learn, grow? Who's best to support them to achieve that goal? This idea of precision upskilling. So rather than just throwing someone on a general course, and, Tara, I think you mentioned that, typically to send someone off to leadership training, what can we do to make sure that training is really aligned with that individual's unique leadership journey and those gaps or opportunities that may be presented in their own professional growth? And then this idea of mentoring. I think the idea of both having mentors and sponsors is a great one, and really looking to how we can pair emerging leaders with experienced mentors or sponsors for that guidance and support. So thank you to both Storm and Tara, and thank you everyone for joining today. We would love to continue the conversation in other forums, so you're welcome to connect with us on LinkedIn there or reach out to us afterwards for more information. And we will make sure we send a copy of this deck and recording out to everyone as well after the session. Have a great evening and see you next time. Thank you.